Hey folks, Mike Dawkins from World Cast Anglers here with your Jackson Hole fly fishing forecast for the Labor Day weekend of August 30th, September 1st, and September 2nd. I hope everybody's got some great plans coming up for their bonus day off for the Labor Day weekend. We've got some gorgeous weather, some great fishing conditions and opportunities to get out on the water and enjoy a little bit of that last unofficial weekend of summer here in the greater Jackson Hole and Teton Valley area. We've got our Fly Shop happy hour going on from 4 p.m. until close. We've got half off our dries, nymphs, and foam trout flies. We've got half off our trout streamers, dollar tall boys, for those 21 and up, and our sale rack is 60% off. So come in, stock up before the 3-day weekend ahead and before you get on the water. After a little bit of a wild, wet start to the week, we're definitely drying out and we're starting to see, a bit of those warmer, drier conditions into the end of the week. Places in Jackson, places in Teton Valley, they saw up to 3/4 of an inch of rain, even an inch of rain on the day just of Wednesday. It was so needed, and we actually saw a couple of our freestone rivers really bounce up and flow, and some even decrease in turbidity, or excuse me, increase in turbidity, decrease in clarity, like the Snake there after that rain event, which is going to give us a little bit of what we needed, just a little refresher here before the fall season kicks in to high gear. So for your Labor Day weekend, we've got some gorgeous weather. As I was saying, Saturday is 76 and 45, lots of sun. Sunday, 78 and 47 with lots of sun. Next week is looking pretty hot and dry. Those temperatures are back in the low 80s, high 70s. But if you're looking for the Jackson Hole One Fly fishing forecast of next weekend, it's looking pretty good with some days in the mid 70s, low 70s, partly cloudy, hopefully some cooler temperatures and some days and nights for the 2-day angling event for the Jackson Hole One Fly, sort of coming up there on the 6th and the 7th. The South Fork of the Snake, we've got 10,600 CFS coming out of Palisades Dam, 11,300 CFS there on the lower river. Still a bit of the same of rinse and repeat there on the South Fork. During that rain event, we saw some pretty good hatches of mahoganies and even some blue-winged olives when things sort of cooled off there. We didn't see a big cooling trend in the water temperature, so we didn't see, some really like robust fish activity. We saw some really good streamer fishing with the overcast skies and the rain, but we're still sort of on the dry dropper program. Chubby Chernobyl ants, a meter, 30 inches, 36 inches down with rubber legs, imitating those mutant stones, or those Classinia stones, concentrating on flats, sort of drop offs, buckets, some of that nondescript water where those fish have moved off those banks, either due to food sources drying up or because of angling pressure. You definitely have to get a bit creative out there on the South Fork of the Snake now that we're in that limbo in between the end of summer and the beginning of fall. We're seeing a lot of terrestrials still out there, hoppers, beetles, and ants, but definitely concentrate on your mahoganies, concentrate on a couple of hecubas here and there, maybe some leftover caddis, as well as blue-wing olives. The Snake in Jackson is 2,260 CFS coming out of Jackson Lake Dam, 3,730 CFS there on the lower river around Alpine. From that rain event, we definitely saw decreased clarity on the Snake, especially the water below Moose. I would suspect that is sort of starting to filter through the system. Things are sort of starting to settle out. I would expect that some increased clarity coming into the river here for the Labor Day weekend, but keep your fingers crossed. Definitely check in, check your fishing reports, look at the water gauges and the weather, and sort of make your decision driving over the Wilson Bridge or something like that. Dry dropper fishing is still pretty darn strong there with Chernobyls, rubber legs, Duracells, quills, any of that kind of stuff. And then we're also seeing some really good hatches of those mutant stones, hecubas, and mahoganies here going into the beginning of fall, but the end of summer. We have those terrestrials to play with too when things get hot and dry. So your hoppers, your beetles, and your ants. The Teton here in Teton Valley, 253 CFS around Driggs, 507 CFS there on the lower river. From the rain event, we saw the Teton come up 100, 120 something CFS in the valley, which was really great. It was really low. It was really clear. I would suspect those flows to sort of be tapering off as the rain is filtering through the system, but still a hecuba game. definitely a mahogany game. Definitely cat is still around, and your terrestrials, dry droppers. Some of those rigs are definitely very productive on the Teton, but I wouldn't get necessarily caught up in fishing on those banks this time of year. I'd find the deeper holding water. Sometimes that's in the middle of the river. Small streamers like buggers, JJ specials, stuff along those lines can be really productive too when you're sort of transitioning in the early morning and the late sort of evening low light periods. The Henry's Fork, we've got 553 CFS coming out of the box, 1,160 CFS there on the lower river. Turbidity is still sort of an issue there, coming out of Island Park Reservoir. We saw things improve, and it's a bit of a day-to-day, condition up there, but the ranch is definitely still that terrestrial game. Honey ants, flying ants, those CDC water wasps, any of those smaller sort of ant and beetle styled patterns have been the most productive. Dry dropper fishing there, as well as nymphing in the Box Canyon, has remained productive. And that lower river portion is still pretty darn good with hoppers, beetles, and ants, maybe some leftover caddis here and there when those water temperatures are at their coolest, earliest in the morning. In a nutshell, we're sort of past a bit of those warmer water temperatures and those alerts. So you'll hear me speaking less and less of it as we move in more into sort of the beginning of the fall season. But there's still definitely something that I would keep in mind, especially when you get on some of those rivers that have low flows and they're super, clear, and that flow and those fish are concentrated. Those areas that can still be susceptible to some of those warming water temperatures. We had some good news coming out of Yellowstone Park, where a lot of those fishing closures lifted back out into hoot owl closures, which means that they are closed from 2 p.m. until midnight every day instead of all day. That goes for the Madison, the Gibbon, and the Firehole. Those things are opening up. We had some guide trips and some really good reports coming out of the Lamar with Soda Butte Creek, Pebble Creek. All of that stuff up there is fishing really good with leftover PMDs, caddis, hoppers, terrestrials, beginning of some of those fall bugs like mahoganies, and that has been a blast as well. So that's about all that we've got here for our Labor Day fly fishing forecast. Once again, we've got our Fly Shop happy hour, 4 p.m. until close, half off dries, nymphs, and foam flies, half off trout streamers. We've got those dollar tall boys for those 21 and up, and our sale rack is 60% off. So savings abound here going into the Labor Day weekend. We hope everybody has a safe weekend and a great weekend on the water, and we will see you here next week.